Weekend in the city. Police say a total of 30 people were shot, 3 of them fatally, just since Friday. Guys?
All right, Jackie, thanks so much.
Jackie.
I swear these are my least favorite stories. One of my least favorite stories to talk about, especially when it comes to police officers being shot when they're there to defend you. It happened during a traffic stop, and those are very dangerous. Traffic stops, anything that's related to domestic violence, things like that. But it just goes to show that these officers put themselves on the lines. They want to go home to their families too. And unfortunately, that female officer did not get that chance. And then there is a male officer fighting for his life.
Jackie, I know you have a personal connection to all of these stories. I'm sorry, Ashley.
We just
listening to Jackie and thinking about your story because I know who you are and I know your personal connection to these kind of stories because your husband is an NYPD officer. Your fiance is a NYPD officer. And what struck me in listening to that report is, and it sounds cold and it sounds removed, but it's a connection to the truth, and it's the numbers. We talk about these stories with officers, but you think about the numbers that add up, of the number of officers that are killed in the line of duty. On top of that, you think about the number of people that were killed in Chicago this past weekend, and then you think about the attention that one single incident where something goes bad in an officer interaction and an unarmed person is killed in an interaction. Compare those numbers. We should put them side by side because we do not give enough attention to the officers who lose their lives in these interactions. And by the way, the innocent people, which we do talk about in places like Chicago, that die every weekend.
It's so true. It's what makes the profession so different. I mean, we get prepared in the morning to do a morning show, and the last thing on our mind is, may someone shoot at us this morning?
Right.
Whereas if you're a law enforcement officer, and you mentioned it, a traffic stop seems like the most basic or pedestrian thing. You see it all the time. It's dangerous in and of itself, traffic flying by, but you never know what you're approaching at that door, at that window.
Right.
And so God bless the family of that officer. We think about them.
We'll be talking about this story throughout the morning. Meanwhile, thousands of protesters are packing the streets of Paris. This is in defiance of a COVID-19 vaccine passport order. Meanwhile, back here at home, Dr. Anthony Fauci says to expect a, quote, flood of vaccine mandates after FDA approval. What you're looking at on your screen are the streets of Paris. Now, we'll just say, this is Europe. Imagine the reaction in a true freedom-loving country. And I do mean to distinguish Paris and France from the United States of America. Imagine the streets of America if Dr. Fauci is right, and we can expect a flood of mandates.
That's exactly right. This is the 4th straight weekend of protest. Estimates between 100 and 200,000 protesters there in France. A preview of what could be coming here. Because, as you mentioned, I mean, you listen to what Dr. Fauci's saying. It's ever moving. The science in his mind is ever evolving, which always means more control and more mandates. And here's a portion of what Dr. Fauci is predicting. He said to USA Today, here's a quote. Organizations, enterprises, universities, colleges that have been reluctant to mandate at the local level will feel much more confident. They can say, if you want to come to this college or university, you've got to get vaccinated. If you want to work in this plant, you have to get vaccinated. If you want to work in this enterprise, you have to get vaccinated. If you want to work in this hospital, you have to get vaccinated. All of a sudden, your decision not to get vaccinated goes beyond your own vacuum and influences society. This statement comes, as he says, once this vaccine gets FDA approval. So he's saying right now it's emergency use, and that's holding us back. They anticipate federal approval, and when they get that, he's predicting a flood of mandates across the board.
But my question for the mandates for the vaccine, what about the people like the gentleman I'm going to interview here in about 10 minutes? He has a health condition that his mother's a doctor, said you can't take this because of the risks that that pose for you if you took that vaccine. What about the people who have had COVID within the past 90 days? They've been told by their doctors, do not take this. So it's just leaving them out in the open. It's like, where do they go? What do they do? They can't go to a restaurant. They can't go to a concert because this is a blanketed approach. It doesn't seem right.
And the weirdest part of this entire national conversation, you have to guess, purposeful ignorance of those who have had COVID and have natural immunity. Totally left out of the conversation. It's so wild that they're not included.
It is amazing. Because 3 months is one thing, but there's plenty of data out there and other doctors that suggest it's much longer than that.
I know people personally who have had antibodies for 8 months. They are tested every month and they still have antibodies. So it's just, it goes back to COVID. There's no one size fits all for it.
No. And Will, we were talking about this in the green room a little bit. We know where it started. Where does it end? How far does it go? How far will the government try to go to mandate that you must get a shot from Uncle Sam? And then once you do, show your green screen or show your papers. As Joe Rogan talked about on his podcast, we may play some of that sound. It's a scary reality, and we may be much closer than people.
You and I were talking about this in the green room, and I think it's an important conversation. We are sort of putting ourselves in check.
Yeah.
Are we overreacting? Are we getting hyperbolic about this idea that we're going to have to show a passport to get in anywhere? And you and I were looking flu. What about the flu shots? Do you have to show things? There's, of course, MMR, which students, kids, have to go to public schools. But this is different. Truthfully, we're not being hyperbolic because you don't have to show your flu vaccination every year to get in someplace new. You have one lifetime vaccination for measles, mumps, and rubella. One time. Now, this is a vaccine right now that apparently needs a booster maybe every 6 to 9 months, and that's required to basically be a free citizen in this society. President Trump was on Unfiltered with Dan Bongino last night talking about you can understand that the vaccine is a good development. At the same time, retain your love of freedom. Listen.
I have to be a big vaccine fan because I'm the one that got it done so quickly. We got it done in less than 9 months. It was supposed to take 5 years. They would have never even gotten it done. So I'm a big fan. At the same time, I'm a big fan of our freedoms. And people have to make that choice for themselves. And I would recommend that they get it and they get it done and they're being protected.
That's the right balance. If you've been vaccinated, you're protected. Sure, could you transfer it? We understand more about that, possibly. But at the end of the day, take responsibility for yourself and let other people exercise their freedoms. It's not that difficult, and that's what the president said right there. Well, another topic, it may be on your TV at night throughout the day, but there are a lot less TVs watching it this year than in 2016, and that is the Olympics. So considering all the political protest around it, COVID, no fans, how has it fared in the ratings? Well, not so great. Here it is. From August 5th, Thursday, 13 million viewers, more or less. That's down 42% from 2016. And on Wednesday, 14 million viewers, down 34% from 2016. Will, we've talked a lot about this. Ashley, I don't know what your thoughts are.
I haven't turned it on, and
You haven't?
No, I have not.
And out of curiosity, why haven't you turned it on?
You know, I'm a huge sports fan. I am. But when I turn on the TV, if I want to watch an opinion show, I want their opinion. I want to hear about politics and what they think. When I turn on a sport, I want to watch the sport. I want to watch them compete. I don't want to hear their opinion. And I know that goes against the American value. Like, you have the right to believe and say what you want. But also, there's rules at the Olympics that you have to follow. Like when they're up at the podium, they have to do certain things. But at the same time, I feel so bad for the athletes who are so proud to be there.
I agree.
And it is such a shame that the numbers are so down because they want to be there. It's not their fault that other people are protesting the fact that they're American and American values.
Yeah, I totally agree. By the way, Andy Billings, he's director of sports communication program at the University of Alabama, said it's pretty much a worst case scenario for NBC. Quote, when you look at the numbers, it's hard to be pleased with them. It's probably NBC's worst case scenario, but it's probably a worst case scenario that they would have been able to predict months ago. Pete, I have no doubt people are turned off by the idea, as Ashley points out. If you turn on the Olympics, you might see a protest, you might see a political debate. One thing I'll say, and I mentioned this a few weeks ago, the Olympics, you need rivalries. And I'm sorry, that's what sports is about. It's a celebration of achievement, but it's also a celebration of tribal rivalries. And although the United States does have a geopolitical rivalry with China, it hasn't reached that level that so many years we maintained with the Soviet Union. And I remember as a kid, I watched in wanting to watch the U.S. whoop the USSR's butt.
But to have a tribal rivalry, you have to love your own tribe.
And so my point is now the tribal rivalry is all internal.
Yeah.
It's all internal.
Crazy. And it's ambivalence. That's the feeling I've had, Ashley, on this. It's like, watch it, not watch it.
I get it.
The passion's not there.
It's different for people. But we are going to check in with Todd Pyro now, switching gears. He is at Bacon Beach Grill in Long Branch, New Jersey. Tell you what, Todd, bacon actually sounds pretty good right now. What do you have for us today?
Well, they actually have 11 types of bacon here, some of which actually may make its way back to 1211 Avenue of the Americas. But Pete, I believe it was the last diner segment that you described my diner approach, and I quote you as ruthlessly efficient, correct?
It's ruthlessly efficient. Absolutely, Todd. You are. TV's Todd Pyro has a methodology, and it works.
And a mythology.
Yes.
Nothing, and I have a mythology. Nothing can get me off of my game ever until today, because look who's here. My mom.
Mama Pyro.
Don't clap. There's nothing to clap for. This thing's going to be a disaster because my mom's already pulling down my shirt saying, this doesn't look right. You got to do this. She's already organizing the tables, taking over the job of Mary Carroll, our producer. I have no control.
Wait.
This is a disaster.
Is this Todd Pyro's hometown? Is Long Branch, New Jersey your hometown or close thereby?
Long Branch is not my hometown. I grew up in northern Jersey. My parents moved to southern central Jersey. So we're about 20 minutes away from here. This is my mom. Marianne, say hi to the nation for the third time.
Hi, everybody.
She's been on Cooking with Friends like 9 times. She's on TV more than our contributors.
I'm gonna be
It's insane.
TV's Mom Pyro.
TV's Mom Pyro. Pete. That's to you.
I like it.
There you go.
I think it fits.
gosh.
Well, it's great to see her and always great to see you, Tom, for sure.
All right, I laughed
See you guys
so
in a
hard. I laughed so hard I unplugged my IFB. So I'm going to have to trust you guys here that this segment is about to go.
Some universities across the country impose vaccine mandates for students. One college in Alabama is asking unvaccinated students to instead pay up. Birmingham Southern College plans to charge all students $500 to, quote, offset the continual weekly antigen testing and quarantining, while fully vaccinated students will receive a $500 rebate. Our next guest is one of the students saying he will not get the shot. Joining us now from Campus Reform, he's a Campus Reform correspondent and Birmingham Southern College student, David Higginbotham. David, thanks for being with us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, so I want to lay a couple things out for the viewers to get caught up to speed here. You're a college athlete. You have a severe food allergy. Your mother is a doctor, and she's the one who has suggested that you do not get this shot because of the repercussions that can come from the vaccine. What did you think when you heard from the school that if they show proof that if you're vaccinated, they automatically get an immediate $500 rebate, but then the unvaccinated students will not? Did you feel segregated?
Well, this is really unfortunate because I like my school and I think they've done some great things in the past. However, this is completely unethical. This is medical segregation, and especially because this is the state of Alabama, a state which, by the way, signed a law banning vaccine passports and vaccine discrimination. Yet, we are still dealing with this issue in our state. And this is the conservative red state of Alabama. If you think this isn't happening across the country, think again. At Rhodes College, for example, they're charging $1,500 a semester. People need to wake up and start realizing that freedom is under assault in this country. And if I and other students do not stand up for our freedom, then freedom may soon be coming to a grinding halt.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting to note that you say that you're in a very red conservative area as well, and a lot of people think this is only happening in those blue states, but it's not. So do you think that because you are an athlete, you said that you thought that you were more pressured to get vaccinated. Why is that?
Absolutely. Well, it goes against all medical ethics. The Nuremberg Code, established in 1947, clearly states there should never be any force or coercion in regards to an individual's health. And a $500 penalty, a $500 tax, just because a student is unvaccinated, is direct force and direct coercion against a patient's will. And for me, in my case, I have a very severe allergy, and my mom, being a medical doctor, has personally recommended for me not to take the COVID vaccine because of the reasons I just outlined. And I'm not anti-vax. I've had plenty of vaccines throughout my life. I've had family members who have gotten the COVID shot, but this is about medical freedom and medical freedom. And if we don't start standing up for it now, then I don't know who will.
Unfortunately, it's turning out to be not that people are anti-vax. It's just that they have the right to decline something like that if they so choose in America. Okay, David, thank you so much and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Outraged at a local school district in Indiana over the explicit books found in their school libraries.
We do not believe it is compassionate or righteous for educators and political activists to co-opt our schools in order to use them for social, sexual, or political agendas.
This is totally inappropriate for K-2 students to be discussing this with anybody but their parents.
CCS leadership is failing our children. You have lost sight of your responsibilities to educate our children. Parents are learning, watching, and taking action.
Our next guest was a teacher in this district for 33 years who retired so she could freely speak out against what's happening in schools. Paige Miller is a founding member of the group Unify Carmel and joins us now. Paige, you there?
Yes, I am.
Good morning. Great to have you. You retired so you could speak out. What were you seeing in the schools that got you so fired up that you said, I have to do something about it?
About 2014, we started bringing in the SEL and CRT ideologies into the classrooms, and we started training teachers. And from the beginning,
SEL is social emotional learning. SEL is social emotional learning. What didn't sit well with you?
Well, the fact that we were pushing parents to the further outside of the circle, and we were becoming educators that felt that we knew better than the parents did. And I've always seen teaching as a...
No, go ahead. Please, go ahead. You mentioned a lot of it is based on trauma. To unpack that a little bit.
Right. SEL is a trauma-based program, and it's a tier 2 and tier 3 intervention because we do have kids that do come from trauma. Right now, we're treating all children as if they're coming from a trauma-based home. And if that's true, the parents are the ones that are creating the trauma. And what I've seen is parents keep getting pushed further and further out from actually having direct impact on their children. And we don't know better than parents. We need to come alongside, partner with parents, not push them out.
Interesting. So based on that thinking, parents are creating trauma. The school's job is to fix that trauma. That includes things like safe spaces in classrooms, many of which parents are never made aware of, correct?
That is correct. We have safe spots in every classroom, and students are allowed to go there. Many buildings, in fact, including the one I was in, we had a room called the Rocket Retreat, and kids could go down there anytime they wanted, and parents were not notified that their children were missing direct instruction because they were at the root of the trauma.
Wow. And what we played in that video on the way in was another result of that. Books being taught to kindergartners, first graders, second graders, read to them with highly inappropriate information they could never process. Here's what we got: a statement from the Carmel Clay Schools, by the way. We'll get your reaction real quick. They said, Carmel Clay Schools has a process in place where parents may express concerns regarding books and their content, which these parents chose not to do. Instead, sections of books were read at our board meeting, along with multiple other meetings around the county. The books have been vetted, and several were not in school libraries. Those that were are under thorough review. What do you say to the school?
Well, we have screenshots from back in May. We started looking into this in May. We've also discovered that media centers, the media specialists are allowed to order books, and there's no oversight. The biggest thing, too, is classroom libraries. There is absolutely no oversight into what teachers are allowed to bring into their classrooms. And I was a teacher for 33 years. There is no process. They said that there is. These books were brought to their attention, and they chose to do nothing. And so that's why we chose to bring them to their attention. Wow. And I will say that our superintendent of Carmel Clay Schools said we don't meet community standards. Well, if those books don't meet community standards, they shouldn't be accessible to our children. Sure,
absolutely. Paige, it's not just elite schools in Manhattan. These are public schools, elementary schools in Indiana, and you're talking about a retired teacher doing something about it. Paige Miller, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You got it. All right, still ahead, the collapse of Governor Andrew Cuomo. A lot of Republicans and Democrats want him out. Two of those lawmakers join us next. Plus, TV's Todd Pyro, live in co-host Todd Pyro, having breakfast with friends in Long Branch, New Jersey.
And he joins us now from the Bacon Beach Grill. Todd, what's going on?
Hey, guys, we got a lot of strong opinions so early in the morning, so we're going to get right to it. We begin with Pat. She is a nurse. She's not a fan of Governor Murphy's mask mandate in schools from a medical perspective. Why?
Because I think it's very important to realize that children will get very, very sick from all the bacteria that is going to be laced on these masks. You know, we're only thinking COVID. COVID is bad, but we have to also worry about other things that children will come in contact with every day and spread it to one another. And it's also important for them from a psychological point of view to be able to see who they're, make friends, smiling faces, sad faces, learn expressions of people from very young ages. Young children should not be masked at a young age.
Master, a big topic of discussion here, Roseanne.
Yes,
your thoughts?
The masks with the little kids. They're touching things. We tell them when you go out, wash your hands. Keep your hands off your face. So now they're touching things. They're changing their masks. They're adjusting them, and they're getting sick.
Right.
They're going to get sick from the masks. And that's what a lot of people are not understanding.
Thank you. Another big topic of discussion here, landlords and them not being able to collect rent from people. We got the wrap, so we got to go. We're going to talk about that next hour. Don't go anywhere, guys. A big diner segment on tap here for the rest of the morning.
All right. Thank you, Todd. We'll be checking in with you all morning long.
Okay, now we're going to turn to your headlines, starting with a Fox News alert. Capitol Hill, where senators will resume infrastructure talks today. The Senate voted yesterday to break a filibuster and advance the $1.2 trillion bipartisan package. But they're still working on amendments, which means final passage could be in the coming days. As the bill faces an uncertain future in the House, moderate Democrats are urging Speaker Nancy Pelosi to allow a standalone vote as soon as the measure passes the Senate. And this so-called spy.
Well, no, I wouldn't for a few reasons. But I mean, I think it's pretty cool. You know what else works? An umbrella. I think it's pretty amazing. You can use an umbrella and keep people away. But we probably don't need that in our apparel. Here you go. We're watching the tropics right now. This is a time of year where we start to see these waves come off of the coast of Africa, and we're headed in towards kind of really the meat of hurricane season. I'm pointing these three out because they're continuing to move towards the west, and potentially by the time we get towards next weekend, we could have something a little bit closer to the U.S. shoreline. So now start to be thinking. It's always good this time of year to be thinking and having your plans in place as we head towards really the peak, which is around September 10th. So you see the really bulk of all of our traditional historical hurricane activity is still ahead of us. Here you go. Temperature-wise, take a look at this. Really warm still right all across the central part of the plains. Cool across parts of the northeast with some rain right along the coastal areas that we're watching. And then we're going to be watching for big storms later today across parts of the central plains from parts of Wisconsin all the way down towards Missouri, maybe even some severe weather with that. All right, Will, send it over to you.
All right, Rick. Sounds like surfing weather on the East Coast. Thanks. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo could face a misdemeanor charge and even be arrested after one of his accusers filed a criminal complaint with the Albany Sheriff's Office. This comes as we learn a majority of New York State lawmakers support moving forward with impeachment of the governor. 82% want him to resign or step aside. Two of those lawmakers, New York State Assemblyman Angelo Santa Barbara and State Senator James Tedisco, join us now. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. So 62% of state lawmakers in New York support moving forward with impeachment. Angelo, I'd love to start with you. What does that constituency within the Democrats in Albany look like? How many Democrats, in your estimation, support moving forward with impeachment of Governor Cuomo?
Well, let me just say there's very few left that I think do not support moving forward with impeachment. I know that many of my colleagues were waiting for the Attorney General's report to sort of make a decision on this. There are colleagues like myself, they called for his resignation last year and followed up with impeachment calls. But some of my colleagues were on the fence. But this AG's report, it's very clear. There was interviews on both sides. They interviewed the governor. They interviewed people that have come forward, and it's clear. The governor has broken the law. He's broken the law even without the AG's report, in my opinion, and by his own admissions, by his own words. He's violated sexual harassment laws that he authored, that he championed, that he's accused others. He's called for the resignation of other elected officials. So I think that what we're seeing is more and more people are now coming on the side of moving forward with impeachment and doing it as quickly as possible. Because what we saw on his press conferences is that he's clearly intending to go after his accusers. There's no doubt about it. He continues to use government resources to try and discredit the Attorney General, to try and discredit his accusers. Just the other day, he had a team of high-priced lawyers on a government website that we are paying for to go after his accusers. It's outrageous. It's clearly he will do anything to dodge accountability. And let's not forget, this is a governor who sent COVID patients to nursing homes to die. And with his back up against the wall, who knows what he's capable of doing now if we don't get him out of office right now.
We've heard the calls for resignation. Senator Santa Barbara, you're a Democrat, so it's interesting now to hear Democrats moving beyond resignation to impeachment as well. So, Senator Tedesco, let's talk about this. You know the governor. You've worked with the governor for years. He is a fighter, you know, by almost any description. He's a bully by some descriptions. Do you expect him to give in to these calls for resignation, or do you expect him to fight to keep his office?
Well, this is a governor that talked about himself as being New York strong. And right now we know after the AG's report, he was never New York strong. He was New York wrong, and he's got to be New York gone. This has been a long and arduous, difficult New York nightmare for our constituents. I was one of the first ones to call for his resignation. I don't think we should allow this governor to resign. This governor has to be impeached. The AG report was comprehensive. It was professional. Remember, this is the governor who asked the AG to do this investigation and give this report. He said, don't make any determinations about the facts. Wait, I'll be absolved. Well, he was anything but absolved by this investigation, this report. He was refuted on every denial he made, who was validated. And we can't forget the 11 courageous women who came forth and talked about this abuse and this toxic environment that he has created there. So they were validated. And the most shameful thing, what we didn't know about, was one of the state troopers was a female with his security division. And while she was putting her life on the line to protect this governor, she had to continue to look over her shoulder to see who might be protecting her from his harassment, sexual harassment of her. Totally unacceptable. So what we have to do now is we have to wait till tomorrow, and we have to hope our colleagues in the New York State Assembly start the process of impeachment. The Judiciary Committee meets tomorrow. They have to get a backbone, a steel in their backbone, send those impeachment papers to the floor of the Assembly. They will come over to our House. There'll be a trial, and we can remove this individual. And what we can do is send him packing, because, as has been said, the AG said he broke laws locally, at the state, and at the federal level. And those 15,000 vulnerable individuals who died because he lied, and he had his staff lie about where they died, how they died, and how they
Senator
got
Tedesco, I got to cut you off because I'm running out of time, and I want to get both of you very, very quickly on this. I only have time for about a one-word answer, but in your experience and your knowledge, both of you, I'll go to you, Senator Tedesco, first. Will he resign before impeachment?
I think the New York State Assembly and the Judiciary Committee, when they decide to send it to the full House for a vote, 76 members, I believe at that point he knows it's all over. And this is why he will resign. He can't run for office again if we impeach him. No other group of constituents should ever face this New York nightmare that we have. So
do you expect the same thing, Senator Santa Barbara? Do you expect the same thing?
I don't think he would resign even if his own mother asked him to resign at this point. I think impeachment is the way forward. I think the senator is absolutely right. There's enough for us to move forward with an expeditious impeachment. And the thing about New York state law, the moment we vote to impeach him in the Assembly, he is out of office.
All right. Thank you both, Senator Santa Barbara and Tedesco, for your time this morning and that insight. We'll be watching.